Hey, how you doing? This is a Talking Dude. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to my channel. Now, this is the first of a series of videos where I'm going to talk about some possible genetic explanations for the high rate of violent crime amongst black people, specifically black men. Now, I won't bore you with the factual evidence as to the prevalence of, or the higher rate of violent crime amongst black people. I'll point you in the direction of my video called Hey, Black Lives Matter UK, let's talk about black crime in the UK, where you'll find various statistics. Now, there have been various genetic based explanations as to why in the UK and in the US and various other countries, black people seem to be more likely to commit violent crimes, certain kinds of crimes. One of the genes that has been implicated is known as the warrior gene. The long name of the gene is monoamine oxidase A. And to cut a long story short, basically this gene regulates the production of an enzyme which breaks down neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin. Now, it's been found by scientists starting in the 1990s and all the way through to the present day that the low functioning or lack of function of this gene that controls this enzyme is associated with aggressive behavior. Now, this started in the 1990s. As I say, there was a Dutch family whereby they saw such high levels of aggression and violent behavior and rape and arson and all these kinds of things, and all of the men had this mutation whereby their monoamine oxidase gene wasn't working. But that's a very rare thing. What scientists have found since then is that it's much more widespread to have low functioning of this gene, and that is what's called the warrior gene. Warrior gene is one of various genotypes whereby the MAOA gene doesn't function, and so it doesn't produce the enzyme which helps to basically control the effects of serotonin and dopamine and so on. So it's called now the warrior gene, and as I say, it's associated with higher levels of aggression. Various studies have shown this to be the case. However, it's not quite as straightforward to just say that this genetic, this warrior gene causes violent behavior, because actually it's more likely to do this, and it's more pronounced where there are specific environmental circumstances. So, for example, various studies, although not all studies to be fair that I've looked at, have found that antisocial behavior amongst adult men who have this warrior gene is more likely when those men were also abused and mistreated as children. Similarly, other studies have shown that among men who have been punished violently by their parents, those who had this warrior gene were more likely to exhibit antisocial behaviors as a result. Now, what this again starts to show is that it's not just genes, it's about how genes interact with specific kinds of environments. Now, another way in which this gene is specific to certain kinds of situations is that it's mostly the effects of this gene are mostly seen in situations whereby you have interpersonal provocation. This is a really interesting one for me because I don't know if you remember Boondocks, this cartoon, and Boondocks did this video called A Nigga Moment, Nigga, so it's alright, I can say that word. And basically it shows how you got this situation here, normal situation, two black guys bump into each other, and it basically escalates into a ridiculous nigger moment where they just start shooting at each other and it all goes horribly wrong, of course. And this is what we're seeing with this warrior gene. It's that in situations like that, people who have the warrior gene are more likely to react in ways that are going to be aggressive, impulsive, violent, and so on. Now, other studies have shown this clearly. So there's a study on screen here which shows that amongst black men, amongst African Americans who have this rare version of the warrior gene, they're more likely to be involved in violent crime that involves stabbing and shooting than African Americans who do not have this rare version of the warrior gene. So some interesting correlations, some interesting connections between the gene and certain types of situations. Now, what I want to do is to kind of draw some of these things together and give you some of my my conclusions from the studies that I've done so far. So first of all, it seems clear to me that this warrior gene is associated with aggressive behavior, and the fact that apparently studies have shown that African American men are more likely to have a certain variant of this warrior gene. In a study, there was a study done in, I think it was 2011, and it found that it found that African American males in the study, 5.5% of them had this rare version of the warrior gene, as opposed to less than 1% of Caucasian men and less than 0.0001% of Asian men. So the fact that that's the case would imply and suggest that the warrior gene could help to explain the higher levels of violent crime on that level. Secondly, the childhood mistreatment. Now, this is an interesting one. There's a Pew Research study that was done not that long ago, actually, in 2015. Let me find it, actually. It was a study that basically looked at spanking and which parents were more likely to say that they spanked their children, broken down by ethnicity. And if I can quickly bring it up for you here, it's worth looking at. Yeah, so here we go. 2015, I don't know if you can see that image there. I'll just try and enlarge it there. But it basically shows that the percentage of parents who said that they use spanking as a form of discipline, 14% of white parents said they do it often, 19% of Hispanic parents said they do it often, 32% of black parents said they do it often. And you'll see there that a higher number of black parents also said that they do it sometimes. And so what that implies, and I think there are other studies which show a similar pattern, what this implies is that, or what it would make sense then, that if African American males are more likely to have this warrior gene, and if the warrior gene combines with being beaten as children to then result in violent behavior later on in life, that would help to perhaps explain the higher levels of violent crime as well. And the third thing, though, the thing that I find most interesting, is that this warrior gene is, as I said, mostly seen, the effect of the warrior gene, as in the violent behavior, is mostly seen in situations of provocation. Now, we know that black people, both in the US and the UK, and probably many other Western countries, are very likely to reside in high-density neighbourhoods where provocation can be a much more regular occurrence than outside the hood or the ghetto or whatever. So it could be that this geographical fact, allied to the prevalence of the warrior gene amongst black men and black boys, also helps to explain the higher levels of violent crime. Now, it's important to say this isn't the last word. There's so much more complication to this issue. This warrior gene can interact. Studies have shown that it interacts with other genes, and also it can, interact with environmental factors, with epigenetic factors, and with other biological factors in ways that can either mediate or exacerbate the effects on people's behavior. And it could be that in certain environments, in certain contexts, the warrior gene might even play a positive role. So I've seen studies suggesting that people with the warrior gene are better at making risky decisions, high pressure risky decisions. So that's something to look at. But for me, there's two takeaways from this. First of all, what can black people do? Based on what we do know from the science here to do with the warrior gene, what can we do? Well, I think the first and most important thing is that black parents need to make sure that we provide a safe, nurturing home environment for our children and do not resort to punitive punishments such as beating. I mean, there's various reasons for this, but just in this context, it's shown that this warrior gene is apparently more likely to be found amongst black men, black boys. So beating these black boys is potentially increasing their risk of getting involved in violent behavior later on in life. So don't beat your children, basically, and work on creating a nurturing and supporting discipline rather than this beating and whipping and so forth. Second thing, you might find this a little bit controversial, but bearing in mind what I said about how this warrior gene thing is mostly seen in scenarios where where interpersonal provocation, I think black parents, all parents really, but specifically black parents, should do all they can to ensure that their children don't grow up surrounded by provocation to get into these confrontations. Now, this is obviously going to take some planning. It's going to take saving, hard work, discipline, For some parents who rely on social housing, it's going to be more difficult because you're kind of chained to where your local authority puts you. So you can't just say, oh, can I go and move to, I don't know, can I go and move to Surrey, please? If you live in Tottenham, it's not really going to be, it's not going to be possible, So I understand it's harder for people who are in social housing and dependent on benefits and so forth. To me, though, that raises then the next question as to when are you having children? People should be waiting until there's a prospect of them being able to look after their children before, having children. Now, also for single parents, it's going to be very difficult. As a single parent, you're just reliant on your income, so you're limited to the lower budget areas, if you like. Now, I want to play you a video from a few weeks ago in January 2017, which shows you. This is a video from Tottenham in North London, and this father is with his daughter here, and listen to what he says about what's happened in this situation.
So my beautiful 40-year-old daughter said, "Dad, can I go to my cousin's party?" I said, "Yeah, of course, daughter, you can." But I said, "I'm going to come down and I'm going to supervise." My brother's told me, he said there's a few guys outside giving problems. But I'm thinking they're 16-year-olds, it's got to be all gravy, So anyway, these kids are in the party. I've come and took them out of the party because I heard they had nice. Wait, was they wrong? 16-year-olds party. Yeah? That's what I confiscated. And if you think that's shocking, watch this one. This week's come to the party with. What's this? Yeah? And before you police officers get any ideas, I confiscated it.
Now, this is what I'm talking about with regard to the provocation that exists. These boys are taking these knives into these parties because there's that kind of honor culture of, yeah, fam, nah, because man, them from from Hackney are going to be coming there, innit? So I need to make sure that I've got whatever. This mentality is probably connected to this whole warrior gene thing, where it's all about any slightest little bit of dissing me or stepping on my shoes or bumping into me or whatever. Unfortunately, that mentality is prevalent amongst many young boys in inner city areas like Tottenham, where this parent, this man's was talking about. And so for me, that's a takeaway, is that we've got to do what it takes to get ourselves out of these areas. Do what it takes. I don't have any emotional connection to the hood or to the ghetto. I grew up in the hood. In my early years, when I first came to this country, I grew up in a very hoody area, but my parents gradually took me to a slightly better area, where we had a house and so on, rather than living in a tower block. And, I'm thankful for that, because Lord knows what might have happened if we stayed there. But anyway, those are just some of my thoughts with regard to this whole area of the warrior gene and how it might connect to crime and racial differences in crime. The next video that I'm going to do should be on testosterone, so stay tuned to that. That's a very hot topic and something that people talk a lot about when they're talking about crime and race and so on. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, then do like it and comment as well. Comment is free, and I really value your comments and insights. If you've got any links as well to studies on this issue of the warrior gene or testosterone or any other potential genetic explanatory factors for crime, then hook me up. All right, take care, and I'll see you later.